Of time you're tuning in the program called What's Going On FlintTalkRadio.com. I'm George Moss, the host of the program, and we're very glad to have you out there this afternoon. We come here every Monday from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock, and every second and fourth Mondays our program is in fact followed by the program that is hosted by two dynamic young ladies. I'm going to get it right this week. I had it wrong last time when I was saying there was Helen Blake. It's Catherine Blake and Catherine Hunter Williams, and they are the co-hosts of the program called Satura's Black History Corner that comes on and stays around for about 30 minutes starting at 3:30. That'll be next week, and as I said, we're here every week. And we are going to welcome you into our house. Again, hope you'll watch all the programs here at FlintTalkRadio.com. And stay tuned for the next hour. We're going to talk about two topics today. And I have been promising that I was going to deal with the issue of the currency and the financial situation as it relates to the United States of America. And I'm going to start today at that topic, because I have been talking for the last 2 weeks about the Sterling case. And there's so much to be talked about as far as that case is concerned, and we will in fact discuss some of that this afternoon as well. But I don't want to start with that, because if I start with that, I won't get to the other topic, because we get into that subject, and then before we know it, the time is out, and then we have not done what we said we were going to do. So I'm going to start with the topic that I think we should be talking about as far as where we're going right now with the economy, because things are not as rosy as what they're saying, and they're talking about there being a downturn in the economy, a downturn, I should say, in terms of the unemployment rate in the economy. And that could not be the case based upon what else they're saying. And I was listening to the representative from Texas, Barbara Jordan Lee, I think her name is. No, it's not Barbara Jordan Lee. It's Jackson from Florida. From the other side, let me get my facts straight here. From the other side, from Texas. Alan West, are you out there? If you're out there, I want to apologize. That's your state. You and Grayson over there, Alan Grayson. Is anybody going to vote for him, by the way, in the upcoming election? Are we going to turn him back out like they did in 2010? And then he ran again and came back in 2012 because they gerrymandered his district, and he got back in there. We're going to have to clean some houses again, and some senatorial seats as well in 2014. I'm looking forward to the election. It's looking real good for a lot of the persons running in the primary, and I hope we will in fact change some of these chairs around and come after some of these people that are voting in these socialist policies. Because one thing we don't need more of, and we have too much of it already, is socialism in our economy.
You know, I like to just ask politicians, like mostly the Democrats, but all of them. It's like, okay, so why don't you just do it? Why don't you just take everybody's paycheck, divvy it up for the groups you want, then hand back a couple $100 for the end of the month so these people can live on? Because that's basically what you want to do.
Yeah, they really do, and it's not like we don't have a model of where this leads to, because everywhere socialism has been tried is led to the same dead end. And John, I don't know if you saw the lines down there in Venezuela. Did you see those lines they had down there?
Yeah, I saw them on Facebook. Somebody posted pictures of that.
You see what happened in the aftermath of Chavez's nonsense, and Maduro, who took over after Chavez died, moved up from the vice presidency up to the presidency, and now he is in fact carrying out the policies that have shown where Chavez was headed. And now they have lines all around the corner, and people can't get bread. Nobody's producing anything. And you would think those guys would learn at some point that it's not the personality that's running socialism, it's the problem with socialism itself.
Well, see, the thing is, that's a problem with socialism, though, and communism, it becomes centered around one. Look, let's face it, Castro, and it becomes now that it's the same way with the Democratic Party here. It transitions from one party family member to the other. Fidel's brother has it. It doesn't even have to be based upon merit or leadership qualities. It's just name recognition and handing it over. So there's so many parallels between what we got going on here in the Flint and Michigan area, along with what's going on in Venezuela and other countries where and North Korea.
I made that point today, as a matter of fact, in my post on Facebook. And what I was trying to get across was look at the Castro brothers, John, in terms of the two Castro brothers, Fidel Castro and Roel, I think his brother's name is and the two of them have been in power for 54 years, starting in 1959. And look at John Dingell, the representative that comes out of the Detroit area here in Michigan, and he's going to be stepping down after the election in November. He's not running again for re-election, but he's run 29 times already, and he served 58 years in the House, and he served that'll be 3 years more than the Castros, who are noted dictators. So how do you explain Dingell?
And don't forget, Dingell's father held the position before he did.
He held it 27 years before John Dingell got there.
And then his wife wants it.
Now his wife wants to run for the position. Well, what is this, John, except the same tyrannical mindset that's hiding under the mask that they can do the same thing through the electoral process. But these people are, in fact, power crazed, and that's the only way you can explain it. Now, I did that in my post today, some of which I brought that in to talk about what I'm talking about today on the economy, but that's part of it also in terms of these people get in power, don't want to leave and stay in power to wield power in other people's lives. I don't see any difference in that and what is going on in Cuba and what's going on in Venezuela.
But it's the same mindset, basically. The same people with the same type of mindset. The Democrats here are different than the socialists because they can't admit, most of them can't admit they're socialists as of yet. Mm-hmm. But their party policies and their party platform is so dissimilar to the socialist regime. I don't see how they can. I don't see how nobody's not comparing them in the press, media press.
The only ones that would be remotely not socialists are the ones who are willing to confine their power under the auspices of the authority given to them by the Constitution. And we all know that document has been dismissed, and they were not following the Constitution anymore in this country. Certainly, Washington has dismissed it, and I think that's an indication that we don't have a representative government. We have a socialist, totalitarian government in Washington D.C. If we didn't have that, we would have the people in Washington, the politicians, actually following the Constitution of the United States. John, I saw this when I was watching the situation at the Bundy Ranch. I was watching that confrontation that occurred when the BLM came, and they thought they were going to do the same thing to the Bundys that they had done to the other 52 ranches, because this herding of the cows and cow rustling, which we thought that was gone in the days of the Wild Wild West, they had been doing that in other ranches' case. But what they didn't reckon with is that they ran into the militia. Well, I'm very proud of those guys, by the way, and I understand what they did out there and what they're still doing, because they haven't left yet. But what happened and what they did not expect to take place out there in Nevada was that the militias showed up from various parts of the country. And I understand the militia, there are 50,000 members in the militia nationwide, and that's a very positive. What they did, they came in, the BLM came in with the 2 court orders. And what the militia came in with was the Constitution of the United States. And there's a dialogue that was secretly taped, where they had a wire on them as they were talking to the BLM members. And the representative told them, well, we're telling you if you interfere, you will be arrested. And they told the BLM members that if you, in fact, try to do that, there will be a mistake. And that we will hold you responsible for what happens here, and we will place you under arrest. And what they were doing was, in fact, using the Constitution to trump the 2 court orders they had from the federal court, as if the federal court is going to tell the federal government is wrong. And when they trumped that with the Constitution and talked about what the Constitution calls for, and they asked one guy that was heavily armed, this guy had almost like some bazookas on him, and they asked him, what is all this weaponry about? He pointed out around the mountain and said, because they are armed. And they were armed also.
Well, I'd like to know this though, man. It's like, how can they justify this mad grab for land when they already have 70%? The federal government has already control of 70% of all that real estate in that state. What do they got to have more for? I mean, what do they got planned for us? What do they got planned? Are they going to bring in huge numbers of people from other countries?
Yeah.
Why do you got to have all this property?
Why does the government have any property in on the federal realms? Whatever happened to states' rights, where the states have the right to their own sovereignty? And how does the government have any land inside of states, unless there's some federal territory like the District of Columbia that it has as a part of a federal district? These are land spaces inside of states. And I don't know of any, and I think I know the Constitution pretty well. I don't know of any part of the Constitution that allows that authorization of the federal government having investment in land. Why would they have 80% of the land?
Actually, I'd put you against that much highly, esteemed, professor of the Constitution, Barack Hussein Obama. Mm-hmm. I bet you could. I mean, I've heard you quote chapter and verse. I looked it up. Mm-hmm. I got a copy here of the Constitution. Mm-hmm. You know chapter and verse. You know what clause it's in. I guarantee he wouldn't be able to answer 90% of those questions.
I don't think Obama knows anything about the Constitution. He doesn't follow it, and I don't even think he went to class.
No,
I tell you what I do. I listen to Obama, John, and I also listen to Ben Shapiro. You know him, right? Ben Shapiro.
I don't know that one.
Okay, he's a guy that took over. Was writing. He didn't take it over, but he's writing for the Town Hall media in their syndicated columns when he's 19 years old. He's at Harvard University, he's a law student, but he's writing for the Town Hall, which features people like Thomas Sowell and those conservative writers. He was doing it at the age of 19. He's now, I think he's now the editor of the Media Research Center's publications. Very smart man. The one that was on the program of this British guy. What's his name? He's no longer there on CNN.
Piers Morgan.
Piers Morgan. Yeah. And he was debating Piers Morgan and simply embarrassed Piers Morgan over the Second Amendment. But anyway, a very smart person. You could tell this guy went to class. There's no indication that Obama went to class.
No, I mean, he doesn't. If he's a constitutional scholar, then I'm like, I could sing soprano and go in an opera. I mean, this guy is like, he has no knowledge of the. I mean, either that or he's already used it as toilet paper because he has no knowledge. He doesn't seem to have any respect for it.
He doesn't have any respect for it, and I don't think he knows anything about it. I just don't get the impression, and I can't tell what the guy's expertise is, but I don't get the impression that he knows anything about the Constitution, and he certainly doesn't know anything about the economy. And what is his expertise outside of getting up in front of groups like he did last week and telling jokes that were very mean-spirited? I mean, you're supposed to have a gala affair at these kinds of activities. I understand that. You get up there, you tell jokes. Listen to the president's jokes, very mean-spirited jokes. Still talking about the birther issue, and one of the jokes he took, talking about when Hillary Clinton becomes president in 2016, and we're not even sure that she's going to run. And certainly, if she does run, we get to bring up some of the baggage she's carrying. She's not a shoo-in. He's talking about if she becomes president, they're going to miss me because nobody's going to say that she's from Kenya, as if they're picking on him because of his race. When if he will simply open up his records, there would be no question about this president. But he has all these things, all these records we can't have access to.
It's a Saul Alinsky move, though. He's following that book verbatim. I mean,
yes,
if you mock and personalize it, attack it, ridicule it, and then all these other people out there, because he's the president, and he's the first, at least half black president. Mm-hmm. Oh, we got to give this much respect. I mean, I don't understand giving respect to anybody. It's their actions you're supposed to be judging, not who they are or where they came from. And yet that's exactly what we're supposed to. Now, because this individual is supposed to be, I'm supposed to feel like guilt because my ancestors might have done so to the other side of his ancestry, which wasn't the case in this. I mean, I don't understand why I should feel overwhelmed by guilt to forego my own self-interest and not question this man in that kind of role. And I mean, that's just ridiculous. I mean,
it is ridiculous. I challenge this president myself, and I do so unapologetically because I think this president is going to go down in history as well. He should go down in history as one of the worst presidents we've had. This president has failed in his mission. And it's really sad to see this where his presidency has gone, because he came in 2009 with so much energy behind him. This country had voted 53%. We hadn't given, I don't think it's more than 3 presidents that had that percentage of the vote in the 20th century. I don't think anybody had. I think they said 3 that had that kind of percentage. I think Eisenhower was one of them.
Ronald Reagan had it.
Reagan had it. Yeah, Reagan certainly had it, because
he had like 68%, 70% of the vote.
Yeah, 49 states.
Yeah.
In the I think there was 2000. There was a 19. Don't tell me. I think in 1980 they were so glad to get Carter out of there.
I mean, I was a young kid when Carter got elected, and I was like, for one thing, he smiled too much. He always wanted the sociopath I went to school with. And the other thing is too, I could see right through that he was not this loving and friendly person everybody wanted to depict him as. I knew he was a sinister. He's got a very sinister streak to him, very mean spirited. And matter of fact, I read a biography. Said the thing. You know how they always try to come across like country bumpkins and lovable and genteel people. They said they're acid-tongued, vicious, backstabbing people. And that's what I've always that's what I saw right through them. I saw through, as a 12, 13-year-old, I saw through that facade.
Yeah, he was a candidate that came like Obama did, as someone that was an outsider. We had just had Watergate, and people wanted to move away from the Washington establishment. They were so dissatisfied with the politics as usual. So here comes this peanut farmer out of Georgia, and had been former governor, and they looked at him as an outsider and did the same thing they did in 2008 with Barack Obama, thinking that this would be something new and something refreshing from what the politics were in Washington, business as usual.
Yeah, another thing I like to do, they sure got a selective amnesia. He went to a church that only became desegregated when he became the president. I mean, basically, that guy who was passing out the hoods for the Wisconsin GOP convention, that Democrat that was doing that. I mean, why were they doing that? Why didn't somebody do that when Jimmy Carter became president? Why did they use that card? I guarantee his family members probably belong to the KKK more likely than any of the Republicans.
Down in Georgia, of course. The Klan was founded right above there. The Klan was founded in Pulaski, Tennessee, in 1865 by Nathan Forrest and some of the others that were Confederate soldiers. And let's face it, the Klan was the military arm of the Democratic Party, and it's just amazing how they have in fact flipped the switch. And so what was going on in the past when the Democratic Party was running the racial dialogue in the country, and every segregationist that's ever been elected in the Congress was a Democrat, you'd be surprised of if you go back and read the history book and then you hear the narrative right now, you'd be surprised of how they are trying to act as if that's the Tea Party was back there doing that.
You know things too. I don't know, I'm not trying to call up your show, but I mean, the GOP has like always been accused of people belonging to the Tea Party. Well, you're only self-interest. You only care about yourself. Well, then, if that's the case, then why aren't they denouncing people who are, the poor and the indigent? Because they want people who are going to give them something. They're also in it for themselves too. I mean, if you're not interested, if you're not in politics out of motivated self-interest, then you're not making a rational decision anyway. I mean, you should be motivated out of self-interest. What you guys are going to do for me?
Yeah, I mean, you hear these people talking about they're motivated for public service. That is so much psychobabble. People don't even know who we are out here. And why would they be running for office to serve people they don't even know? Where would that impulse come from? People serve their own interests. And politicians ought to just get real and be honest and tell us that what they're doing is trying to do those things that will ensure their re-election if they if they're members of the House every 2 years and if members of the Senate every 6 years, and that's the extent of their concern. Whatever will get them re-elected, that's the things that they're going to run on, and that's part of why we have this huge deficit right now, because they throw these things out to their constituents and give these earmarks that are targeted toward various constituencies, and they are buying votes with the public treasurer. That's just the way politics operates, and we ought to get real about what the political scene looks like, because that's what goes on there. But I don't have any indication that we have a president right now that knows anything about what he's doing. The president has run things in the ground. And what we did was look for another outsider like we did with Carter. And, you know, we got another novelist that's in the White House like we did with Carter. Carter didn't know what he was doing as president. And 4 years of that, and they got him out of there. They should have done the same thing with Obama. But I think that, Obama wants to claim that his race doesn't benefit him, but given his record, they should have shown him and would have shown him to do, I think, if he had not been black. Because there's nothing that recommended him to form. John, do you know of anything that he did in 4 years that would recommend him to serve 4 more years as president?
Right out of the gate, I don't know what qualified him to get the Nobel Prize. I mean, it's like, I was bewildered by that. I mean, he was an unknown to the rest of us. Now this committee, in Stockholm, gives him a reward that usually should. I mean, they lost currency for me when they give it to Yasser Arafat. So, and also Yasser Arafat never repudiated his past. I mean, he never did. There was misleading to say. So when they give him that right out of the gate, it was like he didn't really benefit from being the first black president, or at least half black president in the United States. Yeah, I mean, let's face it, they're saying we got to give him something. You got to give him something. So let's give him this, because let's face it, he did nothing up to that point.
That award, if you're giving awards out for becoming the 44th president, that award should have gone to the country because the narrative was that this couldn't happen.
You didn't build this way, Obama. They did, point to the American. And let's face it, he always says that, he said about business owners. I mean, we all know that a business owner does depend on other people, lawyers and people to get the business going, but they're paid for it. Okay, they're seeking their interest. He's seeking his own interest in the process. Everybody else's interest is served. So but if anybody depends on the goodwill, graces, and all the hard work of other people, it's a politician. Yeah. They don't realize they can't even stand at a podium without massive support from everybody else. Somebody's got to direct that thing and pay for it, so he can sit there and occupy ear space with people. So I mean, politicians owe their very existence to the people.
Yeah, the people had a victory in 2008. And I'm convinced that the country was ready for a quote-unquote black president or anyone else that was qualified, Hispanic. And I think this country is over that hurdle. And what we're saying is that they keep bringing us back to a conversation that we've already finished. This country has already finished the racial narrative. And the people that keep bringing them back to that narrative are people like Al Sharpton and these black liberal radio hosts that are talking this madness and creating this diversion when really the country's gotten over that. And Obama's election is an indication of that. They wanted to say he's only one man, but yeah, there's only one president. And if Colin Powell had run prior to Obama running, if he had had that interest in running, I'm sure Colin Powell could have been president. But you can't put Jesse Jackson up there and put Al Sharpton up there and then say because they were not elected when they ran, that's indication of racism. In fact, when Sharpton ran in South Carolina, which is a state that's got half the black population, half the population is white, they thought he's going to go into South Carolina and he's going to be able to have that state as a springboard, legitimizing his campaign. He went in there where the black community was and lost. They weren't endorsing it because they weren't buying this idea this man was qualified to be president. All things that would run is his mouth. And the only one that keeps him up there is really, I mean, people think that Sharpton is all that popular in the black community. Sharpton not that popular in the black community. People have a disdain for this man. But got him on MSNBC and got him on, he has a radio program, which I don't listen to, but I do hear that he has a program over there on one of those stations.
Maybe David Duke should have a show on MSNBC.
Maybe I'll put him on the air.
Because let's face it, Sharpton almost caused a riot back in
He did cause a riot in New York.
Yeah.
And Crown Heights.
Yeah, so why is this man even listened to on the dialogue of race? It's okay to flame people to kill each other?
Yeah,
if you're near that?
They had a thing, John, this morning on Facebook that talked about how they got rid of Donald Sterling, which we're going to talk about that later on during this hour, and Sharpton gets a TV program. And he said things much more hateful than what you heard in that tape, which we're going to talk about that because Steriana was interviewed by Barbara Walters last week, and Barbara Walters asked her if she thought that Donald Sterling was racist, and the woman said no. And that I was astounded that she would all of a sudden be so clear about that when on the tape she was trying to bait this guy. And we're going to have to get into that, and because I think that what we said on the air here, and we wrote about it on Facebook, people have not picked up on what was going on in that tape yet.
How racist could he be? He was stooping a woman who was part Mexican and part black. I mean,
How do you miss that, John? How do you miss that?
It's like, okay, I don't understand that. I mean, it's like he was boinking. Whatever you want to use a polite term, have a joking term. I know you wouldn't use that term, but I will. It's on me. But I mean, his girlfriend is part Mexican and part black. I know those are considered minorities. Okay, and
unless they change the definition.
And it's like, okay, so I mean, how is he considered racist when he's willing to be intimate with these people?
Yes,
physically intimate.
It is amazing that people went off on that narrative again. Because I think people want to believe that the country is flawed in that same way it was flawed prior to the civil rights movement, and really it was not all that flawed even then, other than the politicians that were driving that engine. You look at those southern states, and you look at the white community in general. I'm from the South, so I kind of know the South pretty well during that time period. Went to school in the South. Went to those schools that were segregated by law. I did say by law, and I mean that politicians, in fact, segregated those schools. And they had a dividing line, de jure segregation, which is legalized by the politicians. They made it the law of the land. But I noticed when King finally had gotten back on those buses after they had boycotted those buses for 381 days in Montgomery. What was really interesting to me, the day after those buses were allowed to be integrated based upon the court ruling by the Supreme Court, the very day after that occurred, with King having told the people go on the buses, don't go in there bragging, have your chest out like you want, so I'm going with dignity. And there's King sitting in the front seat. And behind him, there are whites sitting in back of Dr. King. They're not hitting him in his head. That was a ruling. The court has spoken, and the people are sitting behind Dr. King. And my point is that the civil rights movement, which is not yet understood by a lot of people, was actually aimed at the politicians in the South. People like John Stennis and Ross Barnett, George Wallace, Faubus over there in Arkansas. Barnett was in Mississippi. Clark, that was you also in Selma.
You know better than I do. Which party did it happen? All these guys belong to?
You know that was Democratic Party, and they got that now upside down. Where if you listen to the dialogue right now, those who were driving all of the racial narratives, with the Republican Party standing up for the civil rights of all people in America, including the civil rights of blacks, you would never know that by the dialogue that's going on right now. You would think the Democratic Party was the party standing up for black rights, and that the Republican Party, the Tea Party, which didn't even exist then, was a party of the Ku Klux Klan. I don't know how that dialogue gets out there and gets accepted, because that's been flipped totally upside down in terms of what really occurred based upon the historical record. But you know what you do in terms of those that own the media, you're able to, in fact, put that narrative out there because the media is, in fact, controlled by liberals. And they have no interest in getting the story straight. Well, let me get to that later on during the hour, because I'll tie it in with the Donald Sterling case, because that's some points I want to make about that nobody else has made about this case. And we'll say it right here on the air before we get off the air today. But let me start off with what I've been saying I was going to do for the last 2 weeks. For 2 weeks in a row, I've been saying I was going to talk about the economy and the debt and the paying off the debt and paring down the debt, getting the deficit down to a place where it can be handled, because every year you've noticed the debt goes up to another level. It was $10.6 trillion when Obama took over in 2009. Now, I have to tell you something about this deficit going up, because I have to inform you. Some of you already know this, but those that still kept in the dark because they don't want you to understand what is happening in the economy, is that the deficit will never go down. It necessarily has to go up. And I want you to understand a couple of things here. First of all, this is the $1 bill, and I also have, believe it or not, I do have some money left over after the fight this past Saturday. I went to the fight with Floyd Mayweather. I wanted to support him because he was the only one that made a decent comment from the sports world about Donald Sterling, and he was the only public sports figure, black sports figure, or any other figure, as a matter of fact, the only one that had enough class to say that Donald Sterling had treated him with nothing but respect. And those that were saying that he didn't want black folks at his games have got to explain then how it was that whenever he would see Floyd Mayweather in the stands, he would tell Floyd Mayweather, and this is what Mayweather said, "Come over here, Floyd, sit with me and my wife." The man had absolutely no problem with that. So just hold on to that just for a minute. Anyway, I had some money left over from the fight. Went there. I didn't go there because I really wanted to see the fight in there earlier than I normally see it. I normally watch it the week after the fight is over. But I decided I was going to go there. I thought it was going to be $25, but I got there, it was only $17. I would have paid $25 because I wanted to support Mayweather, because I was just impressed that at a time when the herd, the herd is everybody, Michael Jordan, I don't have any respect for these people. Michael never says anything, but when everybody got off the block, and it was safe now to come out and beat on somebody that was already a whipped horse, already down for the count, they all come and pile on, and as if that takes courage. It doesn't take any courage to pile on. What takes courage is what Clarence Thomas is doing. That takes courage. Where everybody is picking on you, beating on you, putting a sledgehammer on your character, and a man stands up and continues. That takes courage. Vilification does not stop this man. And I have a lot of respect for Clarence Thomas, one of the most, in fact, Shelby Steele calls him the freest black man in America, and I would concur with that. Clarence Thomas is the freest black man in America, because no matter what you say about Clarence Thomas, he's going to still go up there and make those rulings based upon the Constitution of the United States, and it does not allow you to differentiate based upon race. Now, if you don't believe that, all you guys calling him an Uncle Tom, go read the 14th Amendment, which is really one of the civil rights amendments passed after the Civil War come to a close. This amendment was passed in 1868 and followed the 13th Amendment passed in 1865 in December I think it was ratified December the 6th, and it was placed in the Constitution December the 18th. The 13th Amendment, then the 14th was passed in 1868, which was the one that gave citizenship to those who were had been indentured servants, quote unquote, then slaves, and then of course freed from slavery, and then made citizens of the United States. Now that's the equal protection clause, and here are black folks asking this is really an irony when you think about it. Here are black folks asking a black Supreme Court justice to act as if he should have no respect for an amendment that made black citizens. That is really an irony when you think about it. And here's Clarence Thomas, who doesn't for 1 millisecond care about what they're saying about him. And he is in fact holding up the principles of the 14th Amendment, which calls for equal protection under the law. And he doesn't care what you say about him. He just continues to do that job that he's assigned to do. And he hasn't deviated from that course yet. Well, I did have some money left over. I could have given Mayweather another $10 or so and would not have felt that I was out of any money worth talking about, because I think that you have to reward character, and Mayweather has tremendous character. He might talk a lot of stuff before the fights and all, but I notice after the fight's over, although he's the best pound-for-pound fighter that is in the world right now, and may well be one of the best, if not the best pound-for-pound fighter the world's ever seen, although everybody want to go back and say Sugar Ray Robinson was that person. But I saw Sugar Ray Robinson fight Carmen Basilio and Gene Foreman, and back in that time period, the fighters were more flat-footed. And I don't know if they could have stayed, and they were also smaller. I don't know if they could have stayed in the ring with these guys we have right now that are bigger, stronger, faster, more fleet of foot, faster in terms of their punching speed. I don't know how many of them would be in the ring with these persons today, and I don't think Joe Louis would be in the same ring with some of these fighters that you have right now. They got one guy that's a guy, I think his name is Wilder, and he's 31-0, and he's knocked out everybody's face. And Lewis was flat-footed. I don't think Lewis could stay in the ring with him. But Mayweather, I want you to know, I gave you $17. I was ready to pay $25 and would have paid more than that, just because I just wanted to, in fact, support you and to say how much I appreciated your voice, which was independent of all the other voices that were out there last week and the week before that. Even his basketball players on the Clippers team that were calling for this man's dismissal, and yet not a single one of those guys could say that Don Sterling on a single occasion had refused to pay them their salary because he was so racist he didn't want the black players to be on his team. Yet the team has 14 players on it, like all the teams do, and 12 of those 14 are in fact black players. And if the truth gets told, out of those 12 players, Doc Rivers, who is the coach of the team, and Don Sterling were fighting over retaining not a black player but a white player, because Don Sterling wanted to get rid of one of his white players that was making $7 million, and Sterling didn't think he deserved $7 million. And Doc Rivers was trying to argue that the guy should stay, and here's Don Sterling, the racist now, who was saying the guy got to go. He didn't think he was worth it. But he wasn't saying none of his black players were not worth it, and he had 12 players on his team out of 14. I refuse to believe that a man could have a team in the playoff. I mean, they were so hurt to play for this man, as if they didn't know about some of the things this man had said and done. I don't think any was racist, although you can put a face on anything and make it appear to what you want it to be. You can put a duck his tail on an elephant. If you get a person and blindfold him and have him fill out what it looks like to him and blindfolded, that duck could appear to be an elephant. But just because you call something a certain thing does not make it what it is. And I have yet to see any evidence that this man is a racist. Certainly not on that tape. Well, I gave Mayweather, I gave you $17 because I wanted to support your class. And I did also note in one of my Facebook posts, you were the only person that stood up to the plate for this remarkable man named Joe Frazier, who was remarkable in terms of the class that he showed. Because when Muhammad Ali came back in 1970 after a 3-year exile, Joe Frazier was the one going into the commissioner's office and making an appeal to give this man back his license. He didn't lose his championship in the ring, and it's only sportsmanlike to let the champion defend his title in the ring. And then when Ali gets his championship, gets his boxing license back, goes in and calls the guy an Uncle Tom. Now all the black folks are applauding Ali as being the black champion, when it was Joe Frazier who was showing the class there. And this man who he gave money to when Ali didn't have any money, and he comes back and have the black community thinking this guy is a sellout because he's not up there talking all this yin and yang. It's how you live and not how you sound. And so I just want Floyd Mayweather to know I think he has a lot of class. You paid for Joe Frazier's funeral when nobody else stood up to the plate. And all these boxers right now making more money than they ever made before, because the fight with Joe Frazier and Muhammad Ali was the first big money fight you had in boxing. And that set the standard through all the sports world of all the other salaries were paid, because they weren't making millions of dollars then. They were making, if they made $100,000, I bet you that Bill Russell, who won 11 championships, I bet you Bill Russell never made $150,000 in a single season. He and Will Chamberlain were vying for how much money each woman get paid. And so they would announce Russell's salary, and then they would give Chamberlain's money under the table, and where it could be more than what Russell got. But they never got, I bet you, if you look at those guys' salary, they never got, during that time period, more than $125,000 during that time. So Frazier and Muhammad Ali, that fight in 1970 in Madison Square Garden, where they got $2.5 million apiece, $5 million between them, made boxing this bigger than life sport, where you have pay-per-view now and people go in there, and here's Floyd Mayweather getting, I think, $37 million last weekend, and he got some of my money too, and that's unusual, because I waited until the following week to see it. But I paid for the ticket because Mayweather is a class act, and this man really looks out for his team. And if that team goes up for sale, Mr. Sterling, if that team goes up for sale, I hope you will remember what Oprah Winfrey said and what some of the others said about it, and you will, because you're going to get if you do sell it, and I hope you don't sell it, but if you do sell that team, I hope you will sell it to someone that has class. And all those persons lining up, I think it's really inappropriate to sell that team, if he has to sell it because of the whatever the fallout is, to sell it to those people that came out there and would denounce the man, where it's forcing him to sell a team, and they line up to buy the team. I just think that's unprincipled. And Oprah Winfrey, Oprah doesn't have any class, and you know her from what she did in Switzerland over there, and that showed no class also. Okay, well, I got to make some comments about the economy, because if I don't do that, then I'm 3 weeks in a row having said I was going to do it. But I want to definitely do with that Sirianni. In the money situation, you got to understand what your currency says. Now, everybody wants to turn over in the back of it, and they see these little images on here. They see the pyramid. That's supposed to be the pyramid of Khufu in ancient Egypt, and they look at the eye, which is the eye of Haru, the Greek's name for Horus. Haru would be the Egyptian name, and the eye there, which is no different than the eye of CBS. And you'll see that eye, by the way, in some of the temples in Egypt. When I was there in 1984, I was looking at that eye that you see on CBS, which they got that from ancient Egypt also. But if you notice the pyramid, this pyramid was built, this is a replica of the pyramid that was built during the 4th dynasty under the second pharaoh of the 4th dynasty in Egypt. And because of the distortion of Egypt's history by the Masons, the founding fathers, I think the first 8 of them, up until Martin Van Buren, who was elected in 1836, and served one term because they had a problem with the Armistice problem, and that energy that happened there made him unpopular, and he was defeated in 1840, and Harrison came in after he was defeated. But the Masons were, the country was founded by George Washington and others. They were Masons, and they had this idea that the Masons had the understanding of ancient Egypt, when it was really some distortions they put into it and all of that. But anyway, they put the symbol of that on the dollar bill. But I think you should stop looking on the back of the dollar bill and look on the front of it. Here's what it says in the front of the dollar bill, and it's also on the $10 bill also. It's on all the money. But look what it says here. I don't think people are paying attention to it, because they're trying to find the conspiracy, and there's the eye and all of these things. Let's look on the front of the dollar bill and on the front of all the currencies. In fact, here's what it says. Now, I took both of them out to let you see that they all say the same thing. It says Federal Reserve Note. That's a dollar bill there. And that is in the center of the currency on the dollar bill. Now, on the $10 bill, it has, and let me show you the difference here, the Federal Reserve note, starting here right in the center in the $1 bill. And of course, you know the dollar bill is 6 inches long, and so that's Masonic, by the way. And if you notice that in the Washington Monument, there are 555 stones that are there. If you add the 5, 5, and the 5, that's 15. You add the 1 and 5, you get 6. So, and then you get the 6 shooter, the six pack, and things of that sort. These are Masonic images behind the scene that you're not supposed to see. But if you measure this dollar bill, you'll see that it's 6 inches. That's a Masonic influence. But get away from that for a minute and just look at the money itself. And let's look at the Federal Reserve note. Now, when you say that this is a Federal Reserve note, what you mean by that is that this is not money. If you have a note in your pocket, some of you have a car note. And what does that mean? It means that the car note means that you're carrying debt. So whenever you see the word note, you know then that that note stands for debt. So what you have here is debt. And what you're walking around with, because the note is not backed up by gold, and since it is a fiat currency, meaning that it's just created out of thin air, then it means then that what you have in your pocket is the nation's debt. You're walking around with a debt. Now, that brings me to this conversation then about what does that mean? It means a number of things, but what it means first and foremost is that if you understand that this is an indication of the nation's debt, then it is saying then that the debt is in the currency. Therefore, you can never get rid of the debt because, and I want you to think of it in this sense. Think of the currency as matter. And then think of the debt as antimatter. In other words, think of one as one side of the same coin, matter and antimatter. So that if you have, for example, we're going to call this currency, and then it's also debt. It's also debt. You see, you have in your pocket debt. Can you see then why you can never pay off the debt? Because you see the thing that they're not, even politicians don't understand this, is that if the currency is a debt, to destroy the debt is to destroy the currency. Because this is a debt right here. And when they say we're going to eliminate the debt, well, the currency is the debt.
So I never thought of it that way, but yeah, I mean, basically, if you do away with the debt, basically it means the system's failed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You will eventually, you cannot get rid of the debt because the debt is what's in your pocket. This is your debt right here. See, this is a Federal Reserve note. Now, I don't have enough time. I'm going to go into this later on in another presentation, but I just want to make some very finite points right now to get you into this conversation, because there's a lot more to it, and I'll go back and I'll bring in over a period of time, because this narrative got to be a couple of shows.
Yeah, especially, I'm interrupt, but especially now with this push for minimum wage, everybody wants to address what the big bad employers not want to give their people, their employees. But they don't talk about the role of taxation, they're the entire face of this thing. They don't talk to the fact that, they don't address the fact that, while the people who are low income will pay into the federal income tax and all this stuff and get it back eventually, and plus maybe a lot of people will get the earned income credit, which basically more money than they ever earned from somebody else to give to them. They don't address the role that taxation plays and how making things livable for people. They don't ever talk about that.
Right. Well, they don't talk about it for a lot of reasons. One of which is that they don't want anyone to understand it. You see, it's necessarily complex in terms of how it operates. If I said, for example, how is this note here placed into the currency stream? a lot of my friends, we meet sometimes, and they start all this conspiratorial talk about what goes on and things like that. But what I tell them is that the way this currency here, this Federal Reserve note is in fact put into the bloodstream of the nation's quote unquote money supply, but this is not money, this is debt. It's backed up by nothing. Is that you have to understand that where it starts out at. And where it starts out at is that the Treasury Department will in fact sell its IOUs. It creates an IOU. And the central banks, and we have 13 of them in this country, 12 of them around the United States, and then we have the Federal Reserve bank itself, and they got 12 residual banks. And they have Yellen, who is just now appointed for 14 years. They can't serve more than one term, 14 years, and have to be confirmed by the Senate, appointed by the President of the United States. So you can forget this idea that they don't have any control over the Federal Reserve, and I'll explain that later why that takes place. And we'll talk about hopefully next week why we don't have a gold standard and why a gold standard will not work. But I'll go into that later on, maybe in another conversation. I want to stay on this right here, right now. You see, you can't pay the debt off because what happens is that when the Treasury Department, which is the place where this is initiated, not this right here now, but they're going to initiate, so this is the end result of it. It starts off with the Treasury Department. And they just simply print an IOU, a number of IOUs. They put these IOUs in a drawer, so to speak. And then they sell these IOUs to the central banks. And they come there and bid on these IOUs with the promise to pay at a certain interest rate. Let's say the interest rate, which set by the Federal Reserve, is 6.5%. That's in the laws of the Federal Reserve. So they pay an interest rate of 6.5%. So the banks come here and buy these IOUs with this currency right here. Now the question is, where does this currency come from? Okay, well, they get the IOUs now in the banks, in the central banks. The central banks then take the IOUs, which created out of air. Say the IOU is the creation of debt. But there's no money there. It's just an IOU. It's a note. It's a bond. Okay, let's use that word. It's a bond. And what a bond is that it's bondage. So what they're saying there is that somebody is in bondage. Let me ask you out there in the listenership, who do you think that person is? The taxpayers. Now, don't forget what I said earlier. They have printed IOUs out of thin air. There's no money there. It's just an IOU. It's debt. They sell this debt, no money, sell this debt, IOU, to the central banks. The central banks take these bills and give this to the Treasury Department, which they then dispense out through the federal government, paying for the military, pay for whatever they have there, pay for the salaries of the congressmen, which they don't deserve.
Golfing trips.
Also the trips, golfing trips, caveat, they got to have the aerobics, and all those things that you see them spending money for. The IRS got a raise, $1 million raise in salary after they have spied on everybody in the country to get a raise. Pays for that. Now, the central banks got the IOUs from the Treasury Department. Their central banks are playing the role of a middleman. They then take the IOUs and then they go over here to the Federal Reserve, who then writes them a check in the form of these things right here. Now, you notice here, and then there's a interest that is on those. They owe the banks also over here. So the banks are getting interest here and interest there. Now, what are they getting interest on? Air. You see, there's no money involved in the creation of the IOU, and there's also no money over here on this end as well. So what is happening is, and this is why you can't pay the debt off, and Ryan didn't know anything what he's talking about. You can't pay the debt off because you see the problem is that the currency, and don't get the currency mixed up with money. This is not money. This is debt. This is debt. You can't pay the debt off because the currency is born in debt with interest attached to it.
And it's paid to a group of people who have there's no oversight on the U.S. taxpayers on these people. They're paid. Matter of fact, the printing process that the Treasury Department creates, I don't think they offset that cost. It's taken out of American taxpayers again. So you pay to print this money for these handful of individuals to have control over and to charge the rest of us interest upon.
Yes, and you're paying interest, by the way, upon money created out of thin air. Did you see the money created anywhere in that process from the Treasury Department through the central banks to the Federal Reserve System back through the central banks? You see the process starting here through the central banks, Federal Reserve, from Federal Reserve back to central banks, back to the Treasury. There's absolutely no money being transformed inside that stream. And what you're paying interest on is currency created out of thin air. The taxpayers are beholden to paying interest on something that doesn't even exist. That's why I'm trying to make it complex. You're not supposed to understand it.
Yeah, and another is too. At this point, could we go back to a gold standard? Or you can't because the economy's too big, the debt's too big. It'd be an impossibility.
It is an impossibility, and we understand that when you put a 6.5% interest on the currency that's produced. So here's your currency, and there's an interest payment on the currency which is at this level. Can you see here that you would never have enough money in the currency stream to pay off the debt because the debt is a currency plus the interest attached to it? That's a complexity that they don't want you to understand. Now, they don't have, and they haven't had since 1983, any one allowed to talk about who the stockholders are. You see, the Federal Reserve is the only quote-unquote branch of government, and there's a branch of government that try to claim like it's an independent agency over to the side, they have no control over it. It's the only one that has stockholders. And you cannot find out through law who the stockholders are. Let me tell you what I think. Let me tell you what my guess is. I don't know because we don't have access to who those persons are. But I tell you what I think it is. I think the stockholders are the members of Congress. I think what we are doing here in this country is that we are paying this interest on that which does not even exist, because this is debt and you're paying interest on this that's created out of thin air, and you're paying 6.5% interest on both sides of the central banks. I am willing to bet a dime to a donut that the stockholders in the Federal Reserve System are the politicians. I am willing to bet on that. And that's why it's secret. And that's what is creating the millionaires there, along with the other things that they actually do. But and when they say they're going to have an audit of the Federal Reserve System, that's not going to happen. And then next week when we come together, I'm going to talk about why we went off the gold standard and why the gold standard will never work, and why the fiat currency is going to lead to the same result where it's always led, because we've always had fiat currencies eventually, and every one of the fiat currencies we've had has gone down to a value of zero. If you don't believe that, then how many of you want to buy the currency of the Confederate States? Did you notice that currency went right down to zero? Well, the currency is going to go down to the same level because fiat currencies will have the same history.
But if you actually have some of the papers, the paper, money, the paper currency or the debt, whatever, now is actually gaining value. But it's just for like historic value. Basically, I remember years ago people used to wallpaper shacks with it, and now I guess there's people who can sell that to collectors, the actual printed paper,
Yeah. Well, John, another thing, we'll talk about this next week. I know how much time do we have? 1 minute. We'll talk about this next week. We'll talk about the fact that the salaries in this country have not really gone up. What has happened is that the currency has been devalued. And we now know that the currency has lost 90% of its value since I was a child. And what is happening is you have to have more currency printed to buy what less currency used to buy. And those who think that you buy more, why are the bags smaller at the stores then? It buys less. You have more of these things here in circulation, but they don't buy as much. And if you think it does, why go look at your parents. If you got any pictures of your parents going to the grocery store and bringing the grocery home, go look at these bags under the arm, and then look at those plastic bags you're carrying home, and ask yourself, why those bags back in that time period when you didn't have all this currency in circulation, why are those bags bigger and why are they smaller right now? You see, you got a lot more currency out here, but the salaries have not increased. It's just that the dollars don't buy anything. And the way you actually judge the value of currency is not how many you have in your pocket, but what does it buy? And it doesn't have the purchasing power. We got to get out of here, but next week, we're going to talk about the dollar and sterling thing also. But I'm going to get back. We'll start for sure, stay on it for a while, about the money stream, so you understand the currency a little bit better in this country. And I'm going to be telling you about where we're heading, and that you got to brace yourself where we're going right now, because we are now on not only an unsustainable course, but it cannot be reversed. And I'll tell you why that is also true. Until next week, I want you to follow your dream, because if you don't follow your dream, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.